Good evening. Welcome to TheArtsinHeart. My name is LIKUYANI ELI, and this is the President We Want. This is a program that will be running for the next 4 so weeks as we try to articulate issues that will be concerning Kenyans headed to the 2022 elections come August 9th. As we converse around these topics, our main agenda is to educate, engage, and inform the electorate on how well their choice of vote or no vote is going to affect their livelihoods or lives come August 9th and thereabout for the next 5 years. So do join me and the rest of the panel, and starting all the way in Nairobi, Kenya, I have my producer, and of course he is one of the only men that makes these wheels run, GODWIN SEGERO. Good evening to you, and how are you tonight?
Good evening, Eli. How are you? Good to see you today. Has been a week.
I can tell you're ready for business. I can tell your books are in order. You're looking good. And let's just hope we can be able to say The President We Want is the program that everybody in Kenya must be watching and should be watching.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have one man that thinks the diaspora and issues surrounding diaspora have been left out for a long time when it comes to leadership and who we choose to go into that high office in the house on that hill. So the African man is joining me from The Hague, rather from Holland, as he tells me, Eli, good evening to you. How are you, African man?
Good evening, Mr. Elin. How are you? Good evening, Golden, my brother. I hope you're doing fine. I'm very ready for it. I'm excited. I'm happy. I only have one excuse. Excuse me, because I'm a little bit on a different location. It's a rehearsal area, so there may be some background noise in the background, but it's a big party center, as you know me. So bear with me. If it's too much, just mute me, but I'm ready to roll.
Thank you so much. We do know you as a thespian, and therefore we expect that to happen as you move around, making this generation more accomplished in terms of talent. But now let's cross over back to Nairobi, Kenya. We have one and only MK Ronald. MK Ronald is not just anyone. He is an advocate with the Kenyan High Court, and I will give him the opportunity to introduce himself. MK, karibu sana. If you may get your microphone, sir, because I believe you're muted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eli, for having me on your show. It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I believe we will interact. We will share much. We will have quite a larger content for our audience. Good evening, Gordon. Good evening, African man.
Good evening,
I'm ready for
MK.
Thank you so much, MK. MK has refused to let us know who he is, but we will learn around the ropes as we continue, because the other gentlemen here seem to be house residents, rather residential panelists. But for tonight, we have one more addition on this panel. And as I said earlier, MK is a practicing lawyer and an advocate with the Kenyan High Court. He's been in service for quite some time, so he can be referred to as a senior counsel. Let's just say we are ready. And tonight, we start off a journey towards the election, which will be happening on the 9th of August. This journey is set to explore us through the following themes. We'll be looking at the cost of living. We'll equally be looking at the manifesto being propelled with these candidates, without forgetting one more issue that we want to look at is inclusivity, leadership, and integrity. And last but not least, our last and final episode will be looking at the election process and the legal framework around the 2022 elections. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen that are watching, let us know your comments and what you think about the conversation you're having with the hashtag election 2022, hashtag #ArtsinHeart. Let's start. Kenya is in problems, and we are seeking to have leaders that will solve those problems. The cost of living is ballooning. Kenyans are unable to afford a common, decent living or livelihood. What do you say, sir? Let's start with you, MK.
Indeed, it is true that we, as Kenyans, are having a ballooning, or a rather blowing out of proportion when it comes to the cost of living. And it has actually become a political or campaign tool as we speak. Right now, very few Kenyans can afford to have actually to have their basic needs, not only food. You can consider other needs like education. We can consider other needs like affording housing. It has become a challenge. Why? Because Kenyans are having a challenge in uh, affording everyday meals, leave alone all the other basic needs that I've mentioned. And the government, as we speak, as we speak, seems to have lost it, seems to have no solution on the table for the no common Kenyan. Nobody is actually addressing the issue. Everyone is promising to address the issue, but nobody is addressing the issue. It is like right now as we speak, we don't have a government in place. While in the real sense, we do have a government in place. But in my up and down and my experiences, as we have, as a Kenyan who is based in Nairobi, I believe we have many reasons. Not only domestic, we have global reasons why we have a higher cost of living. But again, we can have solutions if we are serious, especially as a government. I mean, the Kenyan government is serious about getting solutions towards the cost of living. I don't know whether you intend me to delve into the other areas around this, including what I think are the causes of these ballooning cost of living and what are the possible solutions at this stage. Perhaps you will let me know.
Well, for now, Ronald, we'll leave it at that. Let's just have Godwin coming in. Godwin, what do you make of the current scenario? The other day, we witnessed one lady in a supermarket screaming at the top of her voice because of the price of hunger. Does this seem to concern you on how the current government has performed and probably what is next for that one that is going to hold the highest office?
Eli, honestly, I'll not be worried if it was a temporary situation. But what worries me most is in Kenya, when it comes to cost of living, it shoots within a blink of an eye. But now the problem comes when it comes to reducing, because actually it doesn't reduce, because you see, like if we take an example of the price of unga that was just recently in 2 months or so at 100 bob. Now we're talking about 230. You know, whatever happens, whether the current government or the incoming government, they cannot reduce the price of unga with that margin. What is going to happen is if it will ever reduce, it will be maybe by 5 or 10 shillings at max. What happens to the rest? And the next few months or so, again it will go high by maybe 50 bob, and then it will reduce with 5 bob. You know, so it gives the common mwananchi a very big burden in terms of surviving. And mind you, these are people who are unemployed, people whose business are not doing well, and we just from a very tough times in terms of after the pandemic, although it's not yet there because we are talking about the 6th wave right now, you see. So I think we're here to get into tough times, and it's sad.
We are still in the tides are not coming out very soon. And African man, you are in the diaspora. I believe your relatives back at home benefit from the remittance you make. But do you think it's enough to say that you can still be able to take care of the few needs they have, especially with the rising cost of living back in Kenya and probably across across the globe?
Thank you very much for this time, Ellen. And first of all, I want to make one thing clear, that the cost of living are not rising alone in Kenya. They're basically rising everywhere since Corona. But the question is, how do governments go about them? That's the most important thing. How do governments go about it? Let's take, for example, when the pandemic came. Instead of a lot of governments are going back to find out how can we protect our people. But you see a government like Kenya, we invent something called COVID millionaires. You see, that makes it a very mindset problem. Because in as much as we are Africans and we say Whenever your neighbor is in problems, you also have a problem, you want to solve it together. But what is happening in our countries is the moment there is a problem, you want to profit from it. That's also where the biggest problem is. So for me, I'm much more concerned in terms of the cost of living. What are the mechanisms that the government can put in place? Be it cost of living out of accident, weather problems, just like this one was a medical problem. What I really find in my country is we try, whenever there is a problem, especially from the top, we try to benefit from it. It is like when somebody dies, you want to steal the money from the contribution. That's actually where the problem is. Another thing also is we have to have a mindset. What I see is a very bad mindset. Our politicians are beggars. Our politicians are teaching the citizens to be beggars. Now, when I go to the village, there are these people waking up, waiting on the road for a mheshimiwa to pass and give them 1,000 shillings. They can do that every day for the last 5 years, as long as Ruto has been campaigning. They've been doing that. That is a very bad mindset. First of all, you are learning to depend on laziness. Now, our leaders are promoting the same very laziness. Then they come in Europe, they're expecting us in diaspora to find a fundraising for them to come and campaign. You understand? So we are actually building a pyramid of dependency, of laziness, of begging. And I find it very strange that we kind of acknowledge, we kind of praise, and we kind of like this kind of lifestyle. So for me, it's both ways. The president we want should be the one that doesn't go running around dishing people money in the villages and coming to diaspora, asking diasporas to make this stupid fundraising or put my picture or as the mere water mobilization, all those things. Those should stop. That's my starting point. Bejo should stop from the politicians in the first place.
Well, you want to deal with the problem, you start with the rotten head of the fish, you tell me. But a lot of people will equally allude this to the inflation rates. When the current government came into power, people were still managing. But do you think inflation has raised over the recent past, MK? And what do you make of this forecast moving forward?
Personally, I think there are quite a number of reasons. When we compare where we are right now and where we were, let me say specifically from 2013, because we are part of this discussion is actually critiquing the government we have in terms of what we are discussing. We're in post 2013, we were actually managing. We were in a better position. We have been in a better position until let me say not better, but actually in a manageable position until say 2016, 2017, when we actually were now aware that we have a very big public debt that is foreign sourced. Part of it is actually a domestic borrowing. We also have inflation, and some of us will argue that inflation is global. We have had other reasons. We have had COVID-19, which has affected very many other areas of the economy, including exports and imports and tourism. And by extension, it has affected businesses and foreign exchange. We have had all those reasons. But there is something, I believe there is something that we could have done. Because if we talk of the other reasons, we talk of a ballooning public debt, we will say, yes, we have had the IMF having putting pressure on the government to increase collections, say in taxes, revenues generally, so that we can either pay off debts that we or be in a financial creditworthy position to borrow more. That is a pressure from the International Monetary Fund and the other international players, which has been on the government. And by this, we have had increased taxes. We have had VAT being placed on fuel. We have had other taxes increase on even foodstuffs and other household goods that we use, and the prices increase of which is affecting us. So we have had other those and among other reasons we have had COVID-19, and at some point I even said I usually told my friends we have had a government that is now gotten a scapegoat in COVID-19. We have a government that is going to blame COVID-19 on some of these things. As much as we are having a global issue in terms of rising food prices, there are actually products that we cannot explain why they are increasing in prices. We have locally produced goods. We have failed to support agriculture. We have depended on imports, and we are exporting nothing. We are importing, in fact, what our farmers have. And when these prices increase, we shall blame Russia and Ukraine over things that are not even related to Ukraine. We have never heard of us importing maize from Ukraine or Russia, for instance, or any other country connected to those two. We are always producing maize and importing from other countries that we still can do that when we have a shortage. But we have a very high price of maize, for instance. We have never had such a situation. So this comes to the government in place. Do we have the cabinet department in charge of this, announcing that they are going to reduce food prices and unga prices by 2 shillings? Is that mockery? I believe it is. Because what are you telling Kenyans when everything else, kila kitu saizi, everything else has increased in prices, including simple basic things like kiberiti you find in shops. It is having another price, a different price, a higher price. So it is actually the government that we are blaming. As much as we are going to cite other reasons that are leading to inflation, it is the government that is supposed to manage these causes. We did not just wake up and find ourselves owing other countries and organizations billions and trillions of dollars. We did not. We borrowed. And if somebody argues that borrowing is good, yes, I've had some presidential candidates arguing that borrowing is good, we invest. When are we? Where do we have the hope of getting any returns from such investments to pay off these debts, or we are going to pay from our taxes? We are not going to.
Indeed, MK, you put it correctly that there's a lot of borrowing happening, and including the current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, has cited these two words being something that is an investment that is going to open up Kenya. But when I look at it, it's still debatable on how far this can go. Of course, we can see good things that have happened, but we want to look at the long-term effect of this. And Godwin, if I bring you into the conversation, can you paint to us exactly what is inflation for a common wananchi and what it means to their purchase power?
Exactly, Eli. So when we talk about inflation, basically we are talking about the rise in prices of basic commodities across the economy, vis-a-vis the diminishing strength of our currency. Because as we speak right now, we all know how the Kenyan shilling is doing against the dollar, and you see that's where inflation comes in, because now the common man loses the purchasing power. And to simplify it, I'll tell you, like, let's say a few months ago, 2 months ago, if you had 100 bob, you'd buy a packet of unga, that is 2 kg. But if you have the same 100 bob right now, you cannot buy that packet of unga. It means now you have to add another 130 to get a packet of unga. So if you had saved your 100 bob last month, saying next month I'm going to buy unga, it means you can't use the same money to buy unga. You'll have to go back to your pocket to get more money for you to afford that unga. And see, that's what happens. And when that happens, it means for you, even the other time we were looking at the basic things that 1,000 bob in Kenya can buy. And all of us, I think, I don't think there's anyone on this planet that I was born maybe after 2000. And what we all know in the 90s, what you will do with 1,000 bob, you'll go shop and shop. But now is just break 1,000 bob. Ukinua, maybe let's say a packet of milk, which is now at 65. There's nothing else you can do. Like 1,000 bob cannot give a family, a normal family in Kenya, a stable meal, and that's how bad things are. And just to talk about the same, MK brought in something to do with debt. And I strongly believe government borrowing has had a lot to do with the high cost of living. And mostly I want to focus on the local borrowing, because no government can operate without borrowing. That's okay. But now when the government now competes with the citizens to borrow, that's where the problem becomes. Because when Kibaki came into power, he really avoided the issue of local borrowing, and we all know where the economy was. But now when we have when the next regime came in, there's too much of local borrowing. What does that mean? Banks are business entities, and all they want is to make profit. When the government is borrowing, a government is a sure bet. A government will never default on their debt. So a financial institution, they'd rather lend the government at 11% per annum, knowing that the government will not default, other than give a normal citizen at 18% without being sure whether they'll pay or not. And that's why you find businesses are struggling, because for you to go and get a loan to do your business in Kenya, it's very difficult. They'll ask you many things, I don't know what. And that's where the issues like now the mobile lending apps come in. And in return, what happens? They're giving Kenyans available, they're making the money to look so available without asking many things, but in return, they give them at exorbitant interest rates. So you find someone is paying back the interest, maybe even at more than 100% per month, not per annum, mind you. You see, so how does the nation survive if the government can minimize on borrowing, and mostly locally, and focus on external borrowing, and not to that extent? Because looking at the issue of borrowing, even if that borrowing was being channeled to the right maybe in the right services and stuff, we'll not be here. But now the government borrows, the money ends up in pockets of few people, the government is broke. What happens? Now the taxman goes to the common mananchi again. So the burden keeps rising. But now the person who's being taxed does not enjoy the services from whatever tax they're paying. And that's why you see every now and then fuel prices going up, the tax, I don't know what, turnover tax, like the carriers coming up with funny names of all sorts of names just to make sure that they're getting more taxes from the common mananchi. But where does the money go? It doesn't benefit that common mananchi. It benefits a few people. And that's where the problem is.
Well, the problem is everywhere. As we speak here tonight, we are discussing with this gentleman about the president we want that is headed to the 9th August elections 2022 as we go into polls to elect our leaders. But tonight, we want to start from the very basic that you relate with. That is the cost of living. As we talk about cost of living, how has it impacted you? Do you feel you still have the same purchase power you had 5 years ago? Or how do you think this current government has been able to improve your normal livelihood and your means of actually achieving that? For now, let's take a very quick look on what the DP had to say about this issue that we're mentioning.
To say we are in a storm is an understatement. There are not enough white-collar managerial jobs in the public service or the small corporate economy to absorb the hundreds of thousands of young educated Kenyans with middle-class aspirations. It is no longer possible to extinguish their aspirations by failing them in exams. Neither can we continue to throw crumbs at them, such as the kazi mtaani, or export a few nurses here and there, expecting that it will stem the tide as we continue with business as usual. Sooner or later, the dam will break. Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is we have 10 million Kenyans who are either unemployed or underemployed.
Well, you've heard it from the DP, and we will be discussing further on that issue come next week when it comes to the manifesto. But just to pick from where he's left, we are talking about unemployment rates in Kenya, where 10 million plus are unemployed. And if you follow that speech closely, he mentioned about 19 million Kenyans being able, or rather working, and 3 million working in corporates or formal jobs, and the 16 million of them working in formal and informal sector, where some of them are cannot really depend on their jobs, but they are making this country and taxes here and there. So when we talk about employment, does it play a role, MK, if you may?
Does employment play a role in this
the purchase
issue?
Power of and the issue we are discussing about the cost of living?
It does. Employment, and I will wish to start from where you just left. A big number of Kenyans who are actually employed informally. And you'll find that this informally is where somebody is just trying to do a business, trying something, juakali, trying to open a business here and there so that they can make a living. But now, those ones who are formally employed are very few. And when you look at the purchase power and you look at the informal sector, this is not a very lucrative sector actually. A very small percentage of the informal workers will make enough money for their daily lives, but a large number of it is just from hand to mouth. So when you increase prices for an informal worker or a person who depends on the minimum wage, definitely you are telling them they have no even business walking into a supermarket. If they have right now, if you have actually in Kenya right now, if you have at the lower side, on the lower side, if you have 2,000, 3,000 shillings, you have no business walking into a supermarket. Just go to the nearest shop where you stay, and that money is gone. Because how much walk out of that place with? Almost nothing. It is just used up on sukari, unga, and such like stuff, and you a few years ago you could actually do a proper house shopping with 5,000-6,000. Right now you can't. So when you look at the purchasing power, it is affected by what somebody is doing. And when we don't have, when the populace have no load, have no basic income, they are not even assured of making that money they made through their informal employment tomorrow, they keep on to what they have. And on the contrary, and surprisingly, the government will increase taxes on these things. So it's already somebody is constrained financially, but on what they can afford, there are already taxes on them, very high taxes, to an extent that they can't actually afford it. If they can, they will not afford it to the magnitude that they would have to the satisfaction of the household. So it is actually a very big problem. And maybe to add on that, I wonder why it is being used as a campaign tool at the moment. Because how could this shooting of prices happened last year? It has only come from January towards the elections. From January is actually the time we have had a sharp increase in prices, but we have not had this before January last year and the other years when the elections were distant away. Could this be a reason, a campaign tool? Maybe perhaps I will want to talk about that later. But
well,
yes,
I want us to equally talk about that. But the African man, I saw him shake his head. I see Godwin is eager to jump on that because he had mentioned to me something about that backstage. But African man, in the diaspora, when people are starving, when people are probably having lower income, What is your experience on how these people manage through? Does government play a role in elevating their situations or not? Kindly, if you can get your microphone, sir.
Yeah, of course. And excuse if the noise in the background, just bear with me, I can repeat. Yeah, that's something very important I really wanted to focus on. You see, for yourself to call yourself a politician or a government, it means you are a leader. It means you take at heart the problems of your people. For example, let's have a very simple thing about the fuel rises when this Ukraine thing happened. And you see the pressures on the government. They sit down in the front, our people are suffering. What can we do for them? You understand? So they come up with a thing, let us subsidize fuel. You understand? So they talk to all fuel, everybody involved in the fuel industry, see how can we make it, okay, you have a petrol station, okay, the fuel has a problem, it goes high, so how can we subsidize you? You understand? So the government steps in at a place. And it's not only that, a lot of things when it comes to calamity, when it comes to fires, accidents, weather, everything. So when we talk about kind of leaders are they, we should ask leaders who go like, what if Kakamega forest burned? What are you going to do to those farmers in Kakamega? You understand? Those are some of the things we have to look at. So for me, it is like there's a lot of things put in place already, mechanism put in place in case something happens. It's how we deal with it. We have subsidies. While the governments here try to get subsidies to the people, and the problem is our politicians in Africa, they create problems so they can get money from us. You understand? And I'll tell people three things you have to be very careful about. Unemployment in Kenya is the food of our politicians. Because if everybody was employed, nobody would go on the street listening to I don't know, Uda, Azimio, 10,000 people wasting their time the whole day. The whole day, 1,000 people following one person to listen to what? Because they're employed, most of them. And that's a fact. So keep them unemployed, they listen, dangle a carrot, will be in power. That is something most people don't do in Europe. Nobody's going to leave his job. I am here, I'm leaving a job that just to come and talk about politics. To be honest, nobody wouldn't do it in between. That's the mentality we also have to change. Somebody has nothing to do. So the politicians will put you in an employment position so that you'll be hungry, so you will listen to them, so they'll dangle a carrot to you, so you'll give them the vote. Imitate a boss. That has to stop. And another thing, the politicians themselves create the unemployment through what? Lies. The lies they tell us, oh, nitajenga barabara, oh, I'll do these things. You know, our tax, our money are the one that do those things. So those lies keep the unemployment power going on, the unemployment cycle going on. Then again, taxes. I do not understand, the more things become difficult in Africa, especially Kenya, the more the government chooses to overtax the people. While in Europe, when life becomes difficult, is when the taxman goes like, I give you an ease. You see the opposite. So on one side, there's a problem. Ni kama ukipata matanga unaambiwa sasa saa hizi tumepandisha bei ya mbao kwa sababu kila mtu ananunua coffin. What kind of people? And that's how our politicians think. That's how our politicians think. And then really bad policies. You see, even let's talk about all those policies, all those rules they made during COVID period. Of course, we know it is a big pandemic that even Kenya just follows suit. Apart from Magufuli trying to make some sense out of it with the tasting bananas and tasting carrots for COVID. He tried to make some sense out of it. But some of our politicians are really cheap. They just follow and make it bigger. When Bill Gates steals $1 million, our Kenyans want to steal 20 million. So those are some of the things that we really have to be careful.
I cannot substantiate what you just said there. Otherwise, I'll be here to defend you. But good for you. Wakili is here and he doesn't take pro bono case. As we stick on those issues, because they are very, very emotive, I can feel your frustration where you see Kenyans go and listen to these politicians since morning. And of course, if you're sending in your comments, do not be afraid. We will tackle all of those and we will address your questions. Keep them coming in the comment section and let us know what you think about the cost of living and how the now government has played game to ensure probably you are better off than they found you, or you're worse than they will be leaving you. Godwin, I'm surprised that as we head into election, and this is perennial, the price and cost of living goes up. Is this systematic, as African Man puts it, that you make one poor so that they can worship you, or you want to become an overnight messiah to save us from those crocodile jaws? Godwin.
Thank you, Eli. I'd say, I think for me, it's something that is politically engineered, because you look at the statistics way from 2002, when we are coming from the Kanu regime to the Rainbow Coalition regime, you'll find between that period when there's transitioning period, there's always a rise in inflation, and then it goes down. So what that does say is, what Mateo say, these people create a problem and then try to come up as heroes, we're going to solve this, and that narrows down to things like hoarding. So people will, because these people who sell these goods, they are cronies to these politicians. So these politicians will talk to them, tell them, you know what, let's hoard these goods, let's create a scarcity. What the ripple effect is, prices are going to go high, and then this person comes in, you know what, prices are up now. When I get to power, I'm going to lower the prices. But you see, what surprises me is all these politicians, they come with what they are going to do, but none of them will ever say how they're going to do it, and that's what the problem is. Because now we have many problems. The cost of living is high. Someone comes, says, once I get to power, the first week or the first month, prices are going to go down. How are you going to do it? What's the problem? Why can't we have it done right now? Because you can't let people die just to wait for you to get into power for you to solve their problems. And that shows the lack of political goodwill in solving our problems. The hypocrisy and the irony in it. Look at how many billions the people who want to get into power spend on campaigns, hiring choppers, raising billboards, I don't know, printing what materials, printing t-shirts, printing merchandise. Do people eat those things? Of what benefit is the branding to the common mwananchi? Let's look at it this way, Eli. Be it Azimio, be it Kenya Kwanza. If all this money they are spending on campaign trails, I don't know, hiring what, if these political leaders, now let's think like human beings. If a presidential candidate left right now, because as you speak, there are people in Turkana dying, there are people in Baringo dying, some because of cattle rustling, because of poverty. In Kenya now, people are dying because of lack of water. If you are to leave this place as a presidential aspirant, go to where those people are dying, offer them food, because these are billions that are being spent on campaigns. Don't you think Kenyans will be seeing what you're doing, and they'll know you're capable of doing whatever you want to say? But the narrative is people want to make noise. They want to see how branded they are, how many crowds they can pull. Look at all the politicians from across the divide. When they come on those podiums, they're not talking about issues. They're talking about, that one is bad, I'm the best. That one is bad, I'm the best. But they're not talking about solutions. They'll remind you about your problem, but they'll not tell you how they're going to solve your problem. And that's where the issue is. And the same point Matasyo said, they'll keep you in that position to make use of you every election cycle. And it's until we as Kenyan electorate wake up and know that we have the power. Because whatever we're talking about right now in terms of cost of living, if everyone was to shut down their business and go to them and say, you know what, if prices are not going to go down, we are doing nothing, because the government depends on these taxes. So if you are not going to pay taxes, the government is not going to work. So they have to bow down to the same.
Can I just
Thank
add
you,
on
Godwin. Yes, but make it quick, because we have really less time left, and I want us to handle one more interesting topic.
I just want to put in perspective. Let's look at a guy like Ruto. This guy's been campaigning the whole year. He goes to church. In Nigeria, gives a minimum of 400 million. That's the church. On his campaign, put it 400 million. On scandals, 200 million. We are talking about 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 million. 800 million. It's a lot of money also in Europe. And with 1,000 people in charge. And then we're talking about employment. This is enough money to have everybody in that church start something bigger than a kiosk. And you are sitting there in that church, unapiga makofi ati kanisani umepewa 200 million. Now we're going to talk about unemployed. Do you know how much that hurts? That's my point.
Thank you, Matasyo, puts it into perspective. And again, he has a right to express his opinion when it comes here to the president I want or we want, because we will be going to election and your decision matters, your vote matters, and your vote counts. Even though sometimes they say it's not about the one that votes that counts, it's rather the one that counts the vote that actually do count. Let's get to the comment section before we fly over to the next conversation. I see here Eugene, who said the speaker is actually right. Mbehu has to stop. Yes, nipeko kitu kidogo, nipeko ko tamati, they use it. Wow, that's deep and true, Matasyo. Mbehu must stop. Hashtag word. There's this thing that has been going around and everybody is asking Zuckerberg to make an emoji that says we. When they ask you how is life, you answer we. So I hope Mr. Zuckerberg, you are listening to us. And Kevin Tindi Reverend says we. There's no more comment after that. Imagine hata candle from 10 bob to 20 shillings. Yani hata chumvi imepanda bei. Those are very common and basic commodities we would use and not notice the price or the worth of them, because when you look at the cost, it was almost insignificant. But well, it becomes significant because Kenya Power makes sure you have no electricity 4 days a week, but you pay complete amount when it comes to your bills at the end of the month. Shame on you, Kenya Power. Again, let the panel not forget the infrastructure going on in the country. Devolution is another thing. I'd like the panel to talk about this in part of the problem. Rather, is this part of the problem? Yeah. Devolution. Did devolution make us deviate from what was going to make us one country function or not? I believe that's the question. And I see one more coming here. That is Brian Namusende, who says, with the 4 aspirants on board, can I kindly know in whose hands are we safe? Be honest. And those are some of the questions we seek to answer as we progress with this conversation. But for tonight, we are asking, how are you doing when it comes to the economics and your power of purchase? Uko sawa ama we uko tu ama wewe ni we? Wakili, a lot of stories have been going around. The government of today, the previous governments, and the governments since the foundation and the founding fathers, the biggest fight has been corruption. But I think there has been the master of them all. The current government has proved to us corruption actually works. Anything that comes, including condoms to protect their people and mosquitoes away from mosquito nets, there's corruption involved. KEMSA is another thing. COVID millionaires. And the list goes on and on and on, including people who decide that tonight they are not going to defend themselves. They will just say, mtu wetu anateswa. What role has corruption played in all this fiasco, including the overborrowing of money that we cannot account for, and the president say anasema, sasa mimi niko ku Ukraine? MK.
Yes, Elkan. Actually, corruption has played a bigger role, and it starts from the ultimate leadership. And this is the person who actually, who the buck stops with. And this is the president. We have even had the president acknowledging there is corruption. But then if you are in charge and you are the one acknowledging there is corruption, but you cannot do anything about it, or you are unable, your hands are like tied, why wouldn't you want people to think you are part of it, or you're even a beneficiary of the same? So there is a problem in that. From the president, we have now the executive. The executive, we have the cabinet departments, the ministries. And under these ministries are where the parastatals are. Parastatals are in charge of various departments. We have, for instance, the Ministry for Agriculture. We will have the Ministry for, we will have the Finance Department, where we have had cases of corruption until we have even had to change cabinet secretaries. That is, when there is corruption from the top, how do you expect the people who are actually doing the work at the bottom of the chain of command, or the chain of the hierarchy of the executive towards to Wachini, the person who is now executing the actual work at the parastatals to perform? They will not. They will be scheming on how to steal, because after all, even the people above them are using them to steal. So eventually, we are having nothing on the ground. We are having a problem. We are having corruption. We are having things on paper, policies on paper. We are having a development in speeches, but when we are on the ground, we cannot see anything. We are only suffering. Somebody who was responsible for importation of food stuff has done nothing, or who was responsible for NCPB, for the purchase of the cereals, has not been doing that, or has had no money to purchase. Why? Because this person is interested in imports. This person who is a minister or who is a leader or in a parastatal or an institution of the government is interested in imports. So they will not purchase, so that it reaches a point where there is artificial shortage and they have to import. That is a selfish game. So from the top to the bottom, there is corruption in Kenya. There is. Everybody knows about that. It is not even an issue of whether there is. There is, it is obvious. Now, we have had a leader who is not willing to fight it. We are always talking of the fight against corruption. Do you think there is a fight? Does anybody think there is actually a fight, or it is just a word used, a war on, whatever is the war? We should have seen it. There is no war on corruption. There is corruption. We need somebody now to fight the corruption. That is why in the president we want somebody who will actually fight corruption. And unfortunately, when you look at them, we have four. We have Mwaure, we have Mochakoya, we have Ruto, and we have Raila. I don't know who our listener will choose. Do we have anybody in these people who will actually fight corruption? I don't know, but I believe, and my belief is founded. Corruption is one of the main reasons we are suffering as we speak.
That's a great belief, and even as you pose that question, I want to engage Godwin once again. Godwin, you have been here with us trying to, work around the programs that we do as Art in Heart. And some of those basic questions we've been raising throughout this year is leadership, integrity, responsibility, peace, and cohesion. As we go into these elections, can we cite a leader that will probably propagate integrity? And from the choices we have been presented with, why will we attack the leaders if Kenyans themselves, they thrive in corruption? I mean, right now, most of us are being bought for 150 shillings. And we spend our day abusing the other party. We spend our day hurling insults at one another on social media. And we spend our day making noise and cheering this guy that is buying us for 50 shillings. What role does electorate play when it comes to corruption before and after the new regime comes into place? Godwin.
Eli, I'd say, as MK said, if the leadership was okay, the electorate or the citizens would not have problem complying. But where we are right now as a nation, everyone is corrupt. It's only that everyone is waiting for the right time to come to it. So we'll only castigate corruption when you don't have the opportunity or when you're not in that position. But when the right time comes, you're like, even if I do the right thing, I might not last. Another person will come and take the same money I'm trying to protect. So because I'm here, let me just take and go. That's the problem. Because for me, I have to say, at some point, we need some sort of a dictator, someone who will be so strict, regardless whether you are their allies or stuff, And from the options we have right now, at least someone who is coming up with somehow as Shinda measured towards the same is Wajakoya, who said he is going to hang people as a deterrent measure. If he's serious, if he's going to execute that story for another day, but at least we need someone to be serious, because we've put too much paperwork, too much bureaucracy into fight against corruption until it loses its meaning. Today someone is corrupt. I don't know, they're being followed by SEC, EACC. The next time you'll see the court is saying, we don't have enough evidence to prosecute this person. Before you know it, they're looking for another elective position, to an extent that we have to pause court proceedings towards these people to give them chance to look for leadership positions. And we all know once they're in those positions, it's not easy to go after them. But we need a very strong system whereby all the institutions are working independently without being fair or biased towards one side of the political divide, or if someone is not politically correct, then they're being fought. We've all seen that in the past few years and months, so to speak, whereby maybe if you're found on this side, your file is being pushed very fast. You did this, but when you switch sides, everything is okay. I'm sorry, but I'll have to give an example. We know about the current Sirisia MP, who was convicted during the May scandal the other time. By then, there was cases all over. But now when his shifted comes, he's okay. He was cleared by IBC. So how do you explain to a common Kenyan that corruption is bad? If people we can see, people they're presenting to us as corrupt, they're working scot-free. They're enjoying whatever proceeds they got from the corrupt dealings. So that's what I'm telling you. As we speak right now, the normal Kenyan, because now as we speak now, everyone is trying to survive. So give anyone any opportunity, be it to steal or what, they'll go in, because for how long are they going to wait? And it's a problem that has to start from the top. If you have a serious leader who says, I'm tolerating corruption zero. So if you are corrupt, or if you engage in any corrupt dealing, whether you're my friend or not, you're going to face the law. Not many people not do that. But if we take it lightly.
Godwin, pardon me, but we have had those talks a lot of times, including the current president, who has said, even if you are my cousin or whoever, and you are found liable or capable of corruption, I will not sitakutetea mimi kama Uhuru. African man, is this the situation? Do you think our leaders are intentional about fighting corruption?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it is like telling a dog to hide the bone. I mean, I told you, it is because of corruption they feed. They don't go in there because of salary. 75% of them, to be honest. I am happy that you mentioned Wajakoya. I'm really happy. Because first of all, let me tell you, and I'll close with this, and if I'll be allowed, I'd like to close this and run, because as I told you, I'm really held somewhere else. For any change, there must be a sacrifice. And the first sacrifice is the mindset. The only thing I like about Wajakoya is, let us see there is a politician who can go there and give no cent and have nothing, and people still can listen to them. At least that will be the beginning of ending of corruption. At least this person is not giving us money, so we are not sending him to steal. He can be there, change his mind, do something else. But let us not even think these leaders will do anything about corruption. They will not. In any case, they will promote corruption deeper and deeper and deeper. And I end my story there. Yeah.
Thank you, Matasyo, for that. No, you are having quite a heavy one today, but let's just go again to have your final remarks on this. MK, if you may allow me, we have talked about the cost of living. We have talked about how government, the present one and the previous ones, have functioned. We have talked about if these are politically instigated kind of, inflations and cost of living. We've talked about what the current regime has done, including kazi mtaani and kazi kwa vijana. We've seen that in the previous governments. Do you think the crop of candidates we have are actually ready to address these issues? Please do not divert into the manifestos.
Okay, as much as you don't want me to divert into the manifestos, those are that is the basis. That is actually the source of my answer. Whether I think any of these leaders is keen on fighting corruption, okay, we may have some of them saying that in the manifestos, especially the Raila side. I didn't get an opportunity to really listen to Ruto, but again, manifestos can be, you can say anything in the manifesto, but how do you show the goodwill to do what you're saying in the manifesto? If you ask me, between Ruto and Raila, to be very honest, none of these people is going to fight corruption. You look at the person, you may look at the person, their candidate himself, and think, okay, he looks attractive, he's packaged himself well, he can, it looks like he may not be that corrupt as the previous regime we have had, but then he's not going to work alone. He's going to work with an appointed leaders. He's going to appoint these leaders from his cronies. Some of these leaders have already dished out promised positions without any merit. So and so is going to take this position. So and so is going to take this position. It is actually a political appointments in waiting. And what do you expect when somebody has been given a position not on merit? Definitely, they are not, most likely they are not going to perform, or they are going to perform while trying to please the master. And why would these persons be given these positions without merit, without actually examining their merit? It is because they are friends. They are likely to protect themselves. And considering some of these leaders already have a portfolio, a profile that we know, so most of them are actually accused of corruption practices before, we cannot just go there and expect they are going to change all of a sudden. Now you look at Wajakoya. I haven't looked at heard about his manifesto or what he intends to do. I only heard that he intends to hang those who were found corrupt. I don't know how he's going to do that unless he changes the law.
Do we have a provision in the law that allows that? Just that I want to furnish myself with the law?
There is no capital sentence for corrupt victims. So there is nothing like hang, unless he gets into there and changes the law, changes the constitution, provides for that capital sentence in the law for corruption and economic crimes. That is, then we can say, okay, let us give him this chance, see what he will do with it. But at the moment, there is none. We look at the other Agano Party candidate, Mwaure. I don't know what are the chances he has for the presidency, but he has not spoken of his manifesto. He has not said anything about what he intends to do. We don't know whether he's likely to fight any corruption. I cannot actually rate him not to fight or to fight. We have not tested him. But that is my general assessment of these leaders as far as fighting corruption is concerned. We have nobody who is going to fight corruption. If we say Wajakoya cannot fight corruption in the manner he states, with the current laws that we have. He has to come in and change the laws, then that is another whole process. That is another very long process. We don't know how successfully, how practical is it? We say we were talking of practicality. How practical is it that he's going to hang corrupt people? We have other provisions in the law for that. We have other sentences. We have sentences for them. We have actually penalties for corrupt people. Why then not just implement the law as it is, punish these people? Tell us you punish these people, unless he's whipping emotions. You know, politicians are tricky. Politicians will tell you, this is your problem, and explain it to you until you feel like, yes, you have a big problem. They are whipping your emotions. Then they will propose a solution to their advantage. What happens is they are proposing a solution that is not practical, but because you are already emotional, you cheer. He's going to do it. How practical is what he says he's going to do? He's not practical. So we need somebody who will fight corruption. These people should be put to task. The good thing is they haven't gone to debates. They are still going to rallies. If somebody will ask them, how are you going to fight corruption, Raila? Ruto, why are you not mentioning anything to do with fighting corruption in your rallies or in your campaigns? Why are you silent about it? It's a big issue. Why are these guys evading the issue of a public debt? I think I'm debating. Sorry for that.
Thank you,
So that is
MK.
my
Out
take.
of the interest of time, I'll cut you short on that one because it is going to be one of our greatest and hottest debate come next week, right here as we talk about these manifestos. But let me allow Godwin to have his final word before we can close. Godwin, kindly, what is your take on this? Do they stand any chance to make anything different, or are we just seeing same monkeys, different forests?
Eli, you just concluded the entire thing because all these people we've seen them keep quiet when they're needed to talk about corruption. I think I lost my interest in Raila at some point because Raila was known to be this person who used to whistle blow all corrupt dealings in the government and all major scandals. It was until after the handshake that he kept so quiet, And to me, what that tells me from my own thinking is Raila has gotten to a point where he just needs to ascend to power. Whether he does what, he just wants the title. The vigor that Raila had is not the same that we're seeing right now. How many things the president is on record saying 2 billion is being lost every day. Raila is okay. He's de facto in government, He's there, though not legally, but we all know. But he doesn't talk about it. We've seen Raila defend the government on things that we all can see are not right. Ruto has been silent, conspicuously silent about the corruption thing, So you see, like from the end of Raila, he's using his past history on how strong he was against corruption to forge ahead in this election. But is he the same? Is it the same person? Does he still believes in the same ideals? No, because we cannot see it. Ruto, on the other end, it's a story for another day. So, and how can you tell me now they're going to fight corruption? Because as MK said, these people are already giving people positions even before they are sent to power. And things like CSS, these are slots that are supposed to be given on merit, not depending on which side you are or political rejects. Those people that cannot make it to maybe whatever elective seat they can. We've seen these issues of zoning. They tell you, what, step down for so and so because we're going to give you a position in government. On what merit? Is this something you are qualified to do? Or just because you've been asked to step down, you'll get a position on the other side? We've seen people who have been told to step down. And that's still corruption in itself. So I don't think the war against corruption is going to be fought anytime soon. Maybe we just keep hope and like the cost of living is going to go down, but corruption, we still have a long way to go.
Well, a long way to go, you say that, Godwin. And of course, allow me to just highlight some of the comments coming in. I see Brian Amusende who says, no one is perfect. Let us give them a benefit of doubt. Ni hao tu ndio tuko nao. Oops. Well, you have it from Brian. Patricia Mweni Mulwa says, you cannot fight corruption when every or most Kenyans are corrupt in nature. Kenyans have a problem with corruption when it's not favoring them. Makomere Gilbert says, following, good evening, Makomere, how are you today? And thank you so much for watching. Eugene says the example is the funniest one, and we cannot be blaming Ukraine on everything. Well, how do I describe our politicians? Our politicians, I tend to imagine they are like pediatricians who will prescribe a cough syrup for a child who visits their office or their medical center. And 2 days later, they'll prescribe paracetamol that is, inajua, inaitwa nini? Bruno. Ile ambayo you give children and then their temperatures lower down, and then 3 days later you'll go back to them and tell them, my child has some strange infection. Then they will tell you, your child has blood infection, but I know exactly how to fix it. This is our politician, knowing very well the prescription is just supposed to last you a night until you are at your next step of begging. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the conversations we are going to have. We will debate, we will agree and disagree, but at the end of the day, we will let you know and help you understand who you decide to vote decides how your child and your future looks like. If it's going to be gloomy or not, that is up to you and the decision you make on the 9th of August. Join us next week as we discuss about the manifestos. That is where MK and Godwin and of course the African man will be coming in to really dissect inside outside these manifestos that we have from our candidates. We have the candidate from Agano, is called Mwaure. I don't know if he's taking us to heaven, but we will be finding out if all Kenyans are supposed to be born again come 9th August when he's elected president. We have the Roots Party, where we are told about snakes and not ladders. In fact, we are told snakes, they will give us some antidote that will help us make ourselves rich. Now, probably most of us will start getting addicted. If not, I'm told that is misquoting and misinterpreting the use of bangi. African man probably understand the values of this because in Holland, it is legitimate and legal herb to use. And we have Raila on the other hand, who has some interesting things, such as the 6,000 stipend that most of those needy families will be getting at the end of the month. Let us find out if, of course, Mr. Ruto's proposals and promises to Kenya will be any different, because we know him as the master of promises. He's been there, and we can only judge by the fact that history speaks for itself. Until next week, my name is Likuyani Eli on behalf of MK Ronald from Nairobi, Kenya, our advocate for this panel. Amekaa hapa ili atusaidie so that in case we go offline, you can tell us, no, I will protect you in the court of law. And we have Godwin Segero all the way in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much. You can follow this gentleman on Twitter. Is Havagali MK. Am I right, Ronald? Did I get that right? Twitter is Havagali MK, right?
No, it's Havagali M.
Havagali M. Pardon me, I'm used to the MK. And we have Godwin at Segero Godwin on Twitter, on Instagram, YouTube, and every other space. Follow me at Likuyani Eli, TheArtsinHeart on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And let's meet next week as we discuss more about the president we want, elections 2022. Good night, and God bless you.